Welcome back. Keeping it 1600's live coverage of the third presidential debate. We will be taking your questions on Facebook and Twitter using the hashtag 1600live. And in a little bit, we'll be joined on the phone by Republican pollster Kristen Soltis Anderson, who will give us her reaction to the debate.
Yeah, from the edge of a building.
But first, John Lovett, how do you think that went?
Oh, guys, I feel great. I just want to dispense with some of the darkness. That was the most disgraceful performance by any nominee in the history of this country.
Which is hard because the last two.
The last time was
the
last time was more aesthetically disgusting. It was
the lurking.
It was a crime of vulgarity against the nation. This was undermining the central tenets of our country, of our existence as
You
a
don't think
people.
contradicting his daughter's own statement today by saying he won't accept the results of an election, but he will keep us in suspense like he's a fucking game show host? You don't think that was a good move?
I would have loved to spend a day with the Donald Trump as described by Kellyanne Conway and Ivanka Trump. He sounds like a delight. He's a gentleman. He's never groped anyone.
Nobody respects women more than he does.
No one respects women more than him. Kellyanne Conway during the debate said, vintage Donald Trump. And then a bunch of nonsense. Like vintage. You mean like old?
I can't wait until Kellyanne Conway and Reince and Mike Pence and all the rest try to tell us that he did not say what he said about the election. Because you know that's coming. They're going to be like, no. He said he just wants the election to be over first before he does the results. That's all he meant there. Like, that's going to happen.
Oh my God. They're doing it right now.
Tommy, what did you think?
I mean, his refusal to say he will accept the election results would swamped anything else that could possibly have been said on stage tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the most unifying thing he could possibly have said in terms of bringing Republicans who oppose him and Democrats who oppose him together. That said, I was just struck by how he whiffed on so many pitches. Like the opening question about the Supreme Court, the easiest way to get your base fired up and ready to go, he made it about himself.
I love that.
And something
Justice Ginsburg attacked me, and she was very, very sorry.
Enough about what you think about me. What does the Supreme Court think about me?
Yeah, and then he also just could not contain his rage. I mean, calling Hillary a nasty woman out of nowhere at the end there was terrible. He looked bad, and as usual, she came prepared. And she didn't just come prepared to be on stage and get through that. She brought all her oppo and she unleashed it on him.
It was her best debate. I think she was more prepared than any other debate. I mean, she was prepared for all these debates,
right.
But in her mind, it was like, last chance, get it out there.
Yeah, Chinese steal, like all the racial stuff. Everything was out, all the women. Sorry.
Yeah.
She doesn't miss her chances. You know what I mean? Look, every debate, a candidate's not going to swing at every pitch, whatever. But she has never missed a big opportunity to be what we needed her to be. Like, and that's the sort of the experience of also working for her. You know, look, Hillary Clinton's not a perfect person. I'm not going to be the straight shooter.
He's got the shirt on.
The shirt, guys.
He's got the shirt on.
But the one thing you can count on is that when you have the right, if you have the right people around her and you have the right message and you have the right plan, you don't have to worry about her delivering. She will do the job that she is a and it's the best part of working for her. And for all the ways in which people say, you know, she's so unlikable and all these other things, like it's why people stick around her. They know that they can count on her in that way.
Well, it's also the difference between having helped prep Obama for the debates in 2012 and watched him lose the first debate so badly, and then in the second and third debates, we had like a list of hits that everyone was like, no matter what you do not get off that stage unless you tick off these hits. And he got like 70% of them, you know, and we were all cheering, happy. It was like 100% of everything in this debate.
Loaded for bear, as they say.
I still think there was some argument. I think she won the last debate pretty handily. So did most polls. But she definitely, there was hits that she left on the table in the last debate because the first 30 minutes were like such a disaster. The interesting thing here is the first 30 minutes were as substantive as we've seen in these three debates. By substantive, I meant the questions were substantive. She gave substantive answers, and Donald Trump could only say what he saw on cable news and like bumbled through the answers.
Yeah.
But he sort of emotionally and temperamentally held himself together until minute 30 when he was once again baited by Putin and then sort of went off.
Right.
Sorry, you go.
His chief strategist, Kellyanne Conway, is a pollster. And she knows what the numbers say, and she knows what people they need to bring along to have a chance at winning this election. At no point in this debate did he articulate an argument or a tone or any sort of vision for the country that brought anyone along. If anything, he scared the fuck out of us because we learned what a paranoid lunatic he is.
Right. I'm trying to think of an answer where he was even coherent. And I think in
immigration and trade.
Immigration and trade.
A good 20 minutes.
Yeah, he was at least like doing what he does in the stump speech,
Right.
you know, and he wasn't too far off. But I guess we should start with like the Putin answer was where the train went off the tracks, where the Trump train just sort of.
The Trump train, man.
The Trump train.
Yeah, I mean,
the Trump train is like the Washington Metro at this point. It is on fire and delayed.
Well, it's not all the time that the entire intelligence community has a consensus view on something. Often they disagree. The CIA, the FBI, the NSA will have different sort of views or assessments.
So you send Dick Cheney over to the Pentagon.
Send Dick Cheney
and you have him hammer something into. Yeah, right.
Yeah, the entire intelligence community believes that Russia was behind this hack. We have a lot of ways to figure this out. We can hack them. We can have sources in their government, in their intelligence communities. Like, they have very high confidence. For him to stand up there and say, "You don't know who did this. They don't know who did this. Our government doesn't know."
He's getting the briefings,
but like for the third
he's getting
time.
Intelligence briefings. Yeah,
and
it's
he's
embarrassing.
done it in every debate.
And it's also I suppose I wonder if it really is about opening up businesses in Russia after the election at this point, because Trump is a cynical animal. That's my impression, and he has nothing really to gain by continuing to do this strange dance with Putin.
You didn't text you need to take that?
Sorry, I didn't put my phone on silent. Oh, sorry, it's really just important.
Like Sonny Bunch or one of his
email about
Republican
politics.
buddies on Twitter.
Important email about politics. You guys talk. I'm dealing with some inside shit. You guys go.
Yeah, I mean, the Russia answer was just horrendous. But like, okay, an example of something where he could have made some ground up, I think, would be choice, right? You could probably make a pretty compelling argument that Hillary is an extreme position on choice because she posed various votes that are rigged and terrible about partial birth abortion. Right. He decided to paint this picture of a one-day-out abortion where you're ripping a fetus from the womb. That was just
It was
shocking.
a great example of how bad the exaggeration gets, the worse he gets into the hole. So first it was like the 9th month they ripped the baby out of the womb, and like for some reason that wasn't big enough for him. So it was like 2 days before the pregnancy.
That's called a delivery.
It's just like, what are you? He doesn't. He knows. He knows none of what he's talking about.
Right,
Like
he's just
he became
riffing
a
off of things
monster
he's
after the
heard.
first 30 minutes, but the first 30 minutes he just didn't say anything coherent except, like you said, somewhat on immigration and trade. I guess.
I mean, he had an incoherent but vaguely passable Supreme Court answer. A few others, immigration and trade, he was good, and then once he got to Putin and then beyond, I mean, there's just
when she baited him and said, "You're Putin's puppet," and he just goes, "You're the puppet."
You're the puppet.
He did that twice. He did that on something else. You're the one. He did it on another one later, and I can't remember what it was. The other thing too is I am very sick of male pundits on Twitter. You know, it's not that hard.
Present company not included.
Well, listen, you guys are very evolved. Some of your best friends
Are we
are
woke?
gay. You're bromosexuals. The New York
you.
Times wrote a piece about it.
Absolutely.
We were on the cover in my mind. And but
Dear Diary.
Dear Diary.
That's his joke.
But I see so many of these guys, and it's like I just think. Take a second to imagine that, like, maybe you don't have a really good gut instinct on what it looks like for Donald Trump to be constantly badgering this very prepared and smart woman who people are. I really think people are. I think there's like people like her more when they see her in these settings. They see it's so many of her great qualities, you know, are kind of background radiation, and her more nefarious traits. So says media. And are sort of are made more salient. But then you see in those moments when she's serious and prepared, and intelligent and reliable, and that works. That carries through.
I know. So part of me wants to. I wish we could have just tested the first 30 minutes of the debate too, because there was a lot of like, oh, he had her on the ropes until Putin. Like
I didn't see any of that.
Oh, there was. Oh, yeah.
I saw Frank Luntz saying Frank Luntz's room full of people he's gathered from
I won't
some
call them out. They're people we know, but there were some
Name names, John. What are we even doing here?
Definitely reporters who had been in WikiLeaks feels like their reputation were maligned by being too supportive of Clinton on WikiLeaks, and thus did that tonight.
I mean, subtle.
So there was a few of those people.
Like there are a bunch of dividing lines in this election in terms of who supports Trump or Hillary, but one of them is education. And I think an educated person who watched this debate came away with thinking this man is woefully unprepared to do the job on foreign policy, on domestic policy, on his willingness to respect our democracy. I mean, he did not make up any ground with those voters.
A great moment was he got himself in trouble on. Oh, so she did the Chinese steel. She did the outsourcing. She hit him on the business stuff. He never knows how to respond to the business stuff because he hates it, right?
Makes him crazy.
So he responds with "You haven't done anything for 30 years." So then there's the whole array of tweet. Oh, he did the 30-year line. That's
She just came back with She had a
nailed
couple.
it.
She had a couple just
and
when
she got to the I was in the Situation Room with Bin Laden, and you were hosting Celebrity Apprentice, which she then brought up twice in the debate. Yeah. By the end, she was like twisting the knife. By the end, it was great. She just like threw out Celebrity Apprentice.
She's playing with the house's money, much like Trump did when his dad came in with $3 million and bought chips to bail him out
and never cashed them. I mean. Oh God, I forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead.
Sorry, you go.
I think all of the. Well, let's talk about all the things that he was supposed to hit Hillary on that people would have. Like,
Why?
No, I was just saying, like, what happened? He tried 30,000
emails again.
Right. He tried 30,000 emails, and then he never. But I think it goes to like, it's hard to make a coherent argument on any of those issues, right? Like, it is hard to talk. He's fed himself so much 30,000 emails because it's like a stump speech line, and you hear it on Fox, but he doesn't go beyond what that means, why it's wrong.
Well, he's not articulate,
and
he doesn't prepare. Right. I mean, he could if he had prepared. Like, he has never once. I mean, has there been one moment of this entire campaign where he's been handed a slip of paper, read it 7 times, committed it to memory, and then recited it well? Like, just not in his. It's not in his wheelhouse of abilities.
Okay.
So we have on the line right now. Kristen Soltis Anderson, Republican pollster, who is going to join us and tell us all about her reactions to this debate. Kristen, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great.
That's great. Where did you watch the debate from?
So I watched the first half of the debate sitting on Manhattan Beach, and then the sun set, and I started kind of running out of cell phone battery. So the first half I mostly listened to on the beach, and then the second half I found, miracle of miracles, a bar here in Manhattan Beach that was not playing the Dodgers game and had the debate on.
Wow,
it was silent, just with closed captioning. So it was kind of fascinating. The first half of the debate I mostly listened to. The second half I watched without sound and just closed captioning.
So this has something a bit in common with the Nixon John F. Kennedy debate, because people who saw it on television believe Donald Trump lost the presidency, but people who heard it, only the audio, also believe he lost the presidency.
Well,
little history.
So, Kristen, give us your reaction. What's your headline out of the debate? What do you think?
I think that the two headlines are, one, if the polls continue. Well, I guess the first headline is I don't think that the polls are going to change as a result of this debate. They are who we thought they were. The first debate was that way. The second debate was that way. The third debate was that way. If you like Donald Trump, you probably liked his performance tonight. If you don't like Donald Trump, you probably thought he was a crazy buffoon. If you like Hillary Clinton, you probably thought she did fine dealing with the crazy man. And if you don't like Hillary Clinton, you probably thought she was horrible. I mean, I don't think there's anything that happened tonight that is changing anybody's mind. And so, which is bad for Donald Trump, because he is down in so many polls so consistently and by such sizable margins that he needed to do something to prove to any voters that are left in the middle, because you can imagine, like, who is undecided right now?
Only the best people.
Only the best people. To the extent that those people exist, Donald Trump needed to do something tonight to change their minds, and I don't think that he did. Which then sort of leads to my second big headline, which is, given that he's likely to lose this election, he was really planting the seeds tonight for some scary stuff. I mean, for me, the biggest moment was when he said she shouldn't even be allowed to run because she's a criminal. The idea that in the same way that he tried to make it so that Barack Obama was illegitimate by bringing up all the birther stuff during Obama's presidency, he's trying to do the same thing with Hillary Clinton, except instead of where she was born, it's she shouldn't be allowed to run because she's a criminal. Yeah, and I know that last time he said, well, we should throw her in jail, but this seems different. This is that she shouldn't even be allowed to run for the presidency right now. Yeah. And that on those grounds, this election will be illegitimate.
It means NBC is about to hand her a contract.
That was the big scary moment.
So my question, that was actually sort of getting to the question I wanted to ask, which I agree with you. I think that there aren't a lot of people whose minds will be changed by this debate, except that answer. Both Trump's answer saying, I'm not going to accept the results because I'm the worst person America's produced in half a century, and then Hillary coming back with a very cogent, very sharp defense of our democratic system writ large. I mean, if anything is going to be something that appeals to people that might lean Trump and are uncomfortable, is there anything that could move people? I mean, is that not something that might change some minds at least, or move people around?
I'll be honest, I don't know that that's issue that's going to move any of these undecided voters. I mean, I don't think saying, well, I think it's the sort of thing where those of us who work in politics and get why this stuff is a big deal and have looked at the history and understand why it's really scary times if you you have one candidate who says, I believe this is illegitimate. I think that's the kind of stuff that matters a lot to us. But, I mean, there's a lot of polling that suggests very large swaths of voters who think that, you know, even if their own vote is going to be counted, that there will be voter fraud out there and that maybe the election isn't totally fair. And when you ask questions like, do you think the election will be rigged, you get an awful lot of people saying yes. Now, rigged being defined in a myriad ways. You know, some people think rigged means, well, the media doesn't like Donald Trump, so that's rigged. Other people saying, why are there precincts in Philadelphia that vote 100% Obama? That seems rigged. I mean, so there are lots of different ways you get to the concept of rigged, but I actually don't think that that's the sort of thing that terrifies most voters out there in the way that it terrifies folks who work in this world and are students of history and get why this stuff is a precursor to scarier things down the road.
Yeah, it seems more like an issue that will, you know, possibly lose him the debate or get him in trouble for the next week because it's going to be something everyone talks about. Like the media coverage seems like it will focus on that for quite a while, but maybe, like you said, in the moment, it doesn't move a bunch of voters.
Sure, and if you look at all of the polls, the one thing that Donald Trump does the best is that even in these polls where he's down by 5, 6, 7 points, he still holds Hillary Clinton to pretty close margins on questions like, who do you trust more to handle the economy, on questions like, who do you trust more to handle terrorism. I mean, it's kind of shocking that even though he's losing overall by pretty big numbers, on some of these issues, he does kind of well. And so anytime the headlines aren't about those things and Trump's kind of populist economic message, I mean, that's the best card to play. And so when he's talking about conspiracy theories or any of this other stuff, it's not the strongest ground. So I don't know that it scares a ton of undecided voters away from him, because I think already at this point in the game, if you're scared of Trump, you're probably not voting for him. But I also don't think it's a great topic for him because it doesn't move voters in his direction either. It's not his strongest suit. What this is really doing is setting him up for having some kind of constituency when he, you know, cries in his corner after the election and says, oh, boo-hoo, this is so unfair and I'm a victim. Why don't you come watch Trump TV and we'll talk about it? But that's what this is about.
Yeah, I mean, do you think there were any moments where we put any points on the board? Were there statements or messages that you think were effective with those undecideds?
Well, I mean, the first couple of questions I thought were pretty interesting because Chris Wallace focused on the topics that were the most likely to get Republican voters who are kind of horrified by the idea of Trump to go, you know what, he's horrifying, but he's our guy. By talking about the Supreme Court, by talking about immigration, by picking issues that kind of can rally and excite people on the right who may otherwise not think that Trump has the right temperament or not agree with him on the Russia stuff. So I think in a weird way, Trump had like a pretty good first maybe 20 minutes of the debate, but I've always joked that it seems like right before he goes out, someone shoots him with a tranquilizer dart, and then it kind of wears off after about 20, 25 minutes.
Yeah, they need somebody in the audience. They need somebody in the audience to re-up him.
I know this is a free idea for Saturday Night Live. Like but I guess Kate McKinnon will already be up there as Hillary Clinton, so she can't also be Kellyanne Conway. But I was going to say, if they had a Kellyanne Conway shooting a tranquilizer dart at him,
they need a Steve Bannon to crawl on with a cattle prod.
So Kristen, one last quick question, and then we'll let you go. On these undecided voters, do you think, having looked at a lot of these polls, that these people are going to end up breaking at the end of the day, or do you think that a lot of these folks will stay home and that they're answering pollsters' questions, but when it comes time to voting, maybe they don't vote at all?
Well, so the one thing that's biased in polling that the bias is from, right, is that people who say, the type of people who tend to have a person that will answer to somebody for 10 minutes about politics, the odds that you're going to go down these actually aren't. So it wouldn't that these folks actually do turning out, but these third are the most interesting, or the third-party candidates are the most interesting. In the last ABC poll, you had about 7% of people that said they're voting for Gary Johnson, they're voting for Jill Stein, and about half of them said, I would be willing to change my mind between now and Election Day. The Hillary Clinton voters and the Trump voters were 90%. I'm with my person. They can shoot someone on Fifth Avenue. I'm not changing my mind. But it's this like 7% who they say, oh, you know what, I could change my mind. If they, I don't know who has the advantage with them at the moment. Because, again, if you're ready to cast a protest vote, you may just be willing to blow the whole thing up. You don't care if the Trump is crazy. You're in for big change. Let's bring on Trump. But then again, I think, John, as you noted today, there are some voters that actually think Hillary Clinton would bring about more change or more of the kind of change they want. So it's not a guarantee that just because someone's angry and wants change, they'll vote for Donald Trump. So when it comes to the folks that are answering the polls, I think this is going to be an election where a lot of people actually do show up and vote. I think the fact that you have so many people who are angry and disappointed, it could mean that people stay home, but if they're actually fearful of the other candidate, that's really motivational. So it would not surprise me if we see high turnout on election
That
day.
makes sense.
All right, cool.
Kristen, thank you so much for joining us. Kristen Soltis-Sanderson, Republican pollster with Echelon Insights, also has an excellent podcast, The Pollsters, with Marjorie Romero. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you again.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
I was just gonna say that, like, some of these undecided voters, we could probably maybe trick them with some kind of a pizza, or some of these people that are on the fence between Gary Johnson, Jill Stein, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump. These people that are, struggling with that game of chess. I think we can.
But I do think the reason that it's so steep at this point is he has gone. I mean, they showed like the last 7 NBC Wall Street Journal polls. He was at like 37, 38, 40, 38, 37. It's like, as much as we've gone through all these dramatic twists and turns of this race, it has been remarkably stable since the very beginning.
Yeah.
And for him to have the undecided vote break, for him to somehow get 50, he would need like 90% of the undecided. I don't know if there's enough undecided vote left for him to get. I think it's over. It's over.
Can we just make fun of Paul Ryan or something?
Yeah, let's do that. No, let's do that. Well, our first question from Facebook is, when is it going to be clear to the RNC that Donald is dangerous for democracy? That seems very slanted. That question.
First of all,
I feel like that was.
Martha Raddatz over here.
But it does break the question. Like, what is the Republican Party going to do with what he did tonight?
I think we know the answer.
Sean Spicer's going to crank up his Twitter machine.
Sean Spicer's coming up. Look, once again, Hillary Clinton has proven just how. And Paul Ryan will continue to speak through the paper bag he's wearing over his head. Honestly, I think there's like a tiny. Nobody's talking about it. Is Paul Ryan going to win a seat? Probably. He's super unpopular. He's unpopular with Democrats. He's unpopular with Republicans. Trump ragging on him has cost him like 20 points of support in his own party. He is less popular than Hillary Clinton.
Seems like a pretty safe district, though, right? Do we even know if there's a Democratic challenger that's worth anything?
I'm just sowing the seeds. I just
want
to get people talking. Get people talking. Yeah, Reince Priebus, I do not believe is going to.
I should do that.
What?
Put the earpiece in.
I'm supposed to have the earpiece in?
Yeah.
Oh my
I took
God.
mine off. I don't
That's
know if
fine.
I'm going to.
All right, my earpiece is back in. What do you want to tell me? How
I was
great
told,
I'm doing?
I was told by the
Fine.
control room that you needed to do that.
But I do not think Reince Priebus is going to discover his moral compass in the next 2.5 weeks.
What will happen is these guys will go in the field again, and they'll see that they're still down by 7 or 8 points, and they'll quietly shift resources and allocate them to other places and other races and other states where the presidential is not in play. And they'll quietly signal to candidates that they need to break from Trump. They can, but the senior leadership will continue to be gigantic, pathetic cowards.
Yeah.
And they will send Sean Spicer to his horrible job sitting in Trump Tower.
Sean Spicer telecommuting between just like sitting in Trump Tower and then like FaceTiming with Reince. And Reince's like, how's it going, bud? And he's like, so good, boss. So good.
Well, let's talk about the Senate and the House, which are both in play. Obviously, the House is. We have another question about that. Like the House is a little more out of reach. We talked to Dave Wasserman the other day on the pod about this. The Senate's closer. Like, what do you advise a Senate if you're a Republican Senate candidate? How do you play these last 2 weeks? I mean, do you continue? Like, does anyone keep separating from him? Like, how does this?
It's a real vice grip, right? Like, what are they supposed to do? They need Trump voters, but they also need people who hate Trump because America is. Listen, America's falling out of love with Donald Trump. So they're really stuck. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think we'll see what the big story coming out of tonight is, but it's probably going to be his refusal to accept the results of this election. And the media coverage of that will be way slanted negative because they're intelligent human beings and that's where it should be. And so I think every Senate candidate and the DSCC will put out a press release in every single state saying, do you side with Donald Trump in saying he won't respect the results of this election or not? And that will become a week-long story for all these candidates. They'll either disavow them or they're not. They'll come up in their debates. And it's just a massive distraction, right? Like, Marco Rubio wants the last week to be about, like, how he read his homework and doesn't like WikiLeaks or whatever, and it's all going to be about Donald Trump.
I have to say though, I hate to say, listen, I have no desire to praise one Marcus Rubenstein of the Witness Protection Program. However, he has laid out a smart. Rubio. If I were advising a Republican Senate candidate, I would say take a cue from Rubio. Stick with your cowardly Trump support. Don't talk about it. Find areas where you can create some daylight, where you seem like you're above partisanship. That's what I would tell them.
And then the DSCC has taken money away from poor Patrick Murphy, so that might be enough for Rubio, unless she wins Florida by like 6 or 7 points. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or Donald Trump picks a fight with him tomorrow.
Thoughts on Chris Wallace as a moderator?
I think he's pretty good. I mean, I think he kept it substantive. He kept them in line. I don't think he was particularly hard on either of them.
No.
We got to the things it's much harder for Trump to cry foul if you get to his groping of 11 women at minute 40 than it is if it's minute 1. Right?
That's true.
And so I think he robbed him of that pathetic excuse in a way by getting to this stuff later.
He did a good job of starting with the Supreme Court was a good idea.
Really smart.
Because he could have started with fitness for president, and then we would have had a whole bunch of fireworks early, and then the whole thing could have gone off the rails.
Yep.
Like, he had some boring but substantive topics to start off with. I do think, as good as Chris Wallace was, and he was tough on Hillary and tough on Trump, but he didn't do too many follow-ups, and he just kind of was timekeeper like he said he was going to be. He does still have a Fox News view of the world that's slipped out, just asserting, Barack Obama's stimulus led to 1% growth. Like, that's not true at all.
Right, there are some premise problems.
We have growth, and then there was a stimulus, but there's nothing between that. There's no causation. And, being like, in a $200,000 speech you gave, blah, 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 he had a few of those moments,
I felt a little bit like,
I don't have that many complaints about it.
Whatever.
She doesn't.
Right,
she
and
didn't
I
care.
think it didn't hurt her, and also I think he has constituencies, and I think that was also a way for him to get at harder questions for Trump. So it doesn't totally bother me. The one thing that we should talk, like Lester Holt, Martha Raddatz, Anderson Cooper, Chris Wallace, not one question about climate change, not one question.
Maybe one of the biggest
threats
facing humanity.
They have we do have a media elite, and it does have a bias, but it has a bias towards the issues that a certain set of people care about. And they just don't care about climate change.
Yeah, I mean, I got a call.
They don't talk about it. They don't think about it.
I was talking to a reporter the other day who was like, "How do you think the start of the Mosul operation is playing into the election? Do you think this is something they thought about when they decided to do this or not in the White House?" It's like, honestly, no. It's remarkable that they are undertaking this gigantic ground operation to take back Mosul, to go after ISIS. We have guys in there advising the Iraqi forces, and that comes up in like minute 70, right? Where the Iraq War has been front and center in 2007, 2008, Afghanistan, counterterrorism in 2012. This time it's an afterthought.
So this is a great question. Rank the performance in each debate for the two candidates, or rank each candidate's debates in order of how well they did, each one of them.
I think Hillary's best debate was tonight. I think her second best debate was the first. I think her worst debate was the second.
I would go tonight. I would say the first debate was the best because of the stakes involved tonight, and then the second debate just because it was the least fireworky.
Oh, that's interesting. I'll go with yours. I think it was 3-2, but it's interesting that the first debate, in terms of moving voters, mattered more than the other two.
Yeah.
Just because, and that usually happens. I think Pluff said this to us on the podcast. He would grade the first debate 50% of what matters, and then the other two 25 each. I think that's probably right.
Yeah, I agree.
Trump. Best. I'll start. I think Trump's best debate was the first one. Is
that possible?
I think this was his second, and then I think this was the worst, and then the second was the second.
Well, I think
it was in order. I think he
funny.
got worse each debate.
Substantively, tonight was his worst debate because he attacked the fundamental structure of our constitutional system of government. But performance-wise, I think his first debate. So what am I doing? Style A.
Yeah, Marco.
I think so. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they each had their moments with Trump. I don't know.
I just don't think he put any points on the board tonight.
I think you could go back to his first debate in the primaries and his debate tonight and create one of those word clouds for each of the lines he used, and it would be like a Venn diagram of one every time. I don't think he developed or changed any of his attacks.
That's true.
He brought no new lines or understanding or policy chops to the table, but the terrain got a hell of a lot rougher for him.
So
one
true.
was easiest than tonight, and
all this
was a bloodbath.
Chris Christie prepared him on Sunday, and he was great. Now, who knows what was going on in those prep rooms besides the first time Roger Ailes telling war stories about sexual harassment? But like, I think it probably wasn't the debate prep team as much as like clearly Trump. We know because everyone who met him, everyone who knows him says this. He cannot pay attention. He has no attention span. He doesn't focus. He was the best was there was a moment in the debate where he said, "I was in my hotel room tonight watching one of your ads," and I'm
TV.
like, "You were watching your
cable.
ads in a hotel room? Like maybe I don't know. Maybe you should have studied some of this stuff."
It's also just that debate prep, like Rudy Giuliani, Chris Christie, Donald Trump, like a group of old men cannot achieve anything together. They need the help of smart and talented women and younger men and younger women. They are. Have you like? I mean, old guys are just not up to it. And this like to prep, they're just gonna shoot the shit and be lazy.
Yeah, the cast of Cocoon is not.
Give me a break. Give me a break. What are they gonna? You just like these are guys. These are. I'm going to be more specific because they are rich old men who have been around forever, who are not that healthy. Like these are not guys who are like on the top of their game. They need people around them to push them to figure out what the heck's going on.
On top of that, Hillary Clinton tries and wants to learn, but she also had Philippe doing debate prep, and he's a person who can get in her face and piss her off and get her where she needs to be.
Yeah.
The rest of these clowns, like Chris Christie, call Donald Trump Mr. Trump. He's the Dom, right? Like they're in there with their leather on, like doing whatever he says, and it's just not going to be in a debate prep.
I see.
Where you get him.
You know, Tommy, I was worried that my point was risque and not very good, and I think your point was better, but edgier.
There's like 8 people watching it. We're good.
Oh, this is a podcast, man. We got SoundCloud to go ballistic in the
Someone
morning.
asked one question that we can end with. It feels like we might have one big surprise left in the selection. What would it be? Was that Chris Cillizza? Who was that?
Chris from Washington. Hello.
I don't think so. I don't know, but you can't say that. Who knows? I mean,
Right. Yeah. Who knows? You know.
But like, I mean, every
History's
email
terrible.
correspondence that Hillary Clinton and her campaign have ever had is now out in the public. State Department campaign. Like, I
Yeah.
just don't know. I don't know what else.
You know,
Except for the yoga schedule.
You know who the big loser of WikiLeaks is? Mark Halperin and John Heilman. Game Change is on WikiLeaks.org right now.
I thought about that because a lot of stuff that's coming out right now, I'm like, this is what we usually read in that book after the election, and
Sorry,
it's all
fellas.
sort of out right now. No, I don't think. I don't. Oh, rank the moderators. That was one last. Rank the moderators.
Rank the moderators. Let's do that. What a blast. Oh man.
I don't know.
So
I like Lester's
think-
approach of like not doing anything, sort of.
I think they all did great. I think I love Lester Holtz, like Anderson Cooper.
Well, let's say that Anderson Cooper basically gave the question that Donald Trump that
Right.
screwed Donald Trump in the end by saying, "Did you ever sexually assault someone?" And he said,
Yeah.
and he paused and he wouldn't say it, and then he kept pressing him. So, in terms of what it mattered to the election, it could, like people, some of the women who came forward say that Anderson's question is why they came forward.
I think it's probably a fair criticism that Martha Raddatz shouldn't have debated Donald Trump for several minutes in the middle of the second debate. Sorry, that's just bad. I don't know what that was about. I mean, it was good for Hillary, but straight shooting.
I like Martha a lot personally, so it's hard. I thought
Oh
that
my
dynamic,
God.
that
Beltway
duo,
Tommy Beschloss.
that dynamic duo, I thought pushed him in ways that nobody else did. I thought Lester did a great job. I thought they all did a good job.
Everyone in
Great
our
job,
democracy,
Keanu.
everyone in our democracy is doing
Keanu.
great, except the
Keanu.
worst threat it's faced in half a century.
Everyone else is-
All the institutions, like yes, I mean, the Democratic Party had a contest of ideas, and we selected a center-left candidate. The moderators have done a good job. I mean, I don't know.
So,
to
final
you, voters.
grades, Donald Trump, refusal to accept basic democratic principles, A. Overall performance, F. All right, that's all the time we have for tonight. This is Keepin' It 1600. Thanks to everyone who joined us tonight, meaning our dogs and Kristen Soltis Anderson. We will be back with the podcast maybe Friday if Dan calls in from Hawaii. Otherwise, we'll see you again on Monday.
Sorry, Bill Simmons, that Leo shit on the floor.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Good night.
It was Leo.